Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar, The Evolution of Enterprise Excellence. I am Susan Lecheminant, and I will be your moderator today. Um, Before we get started, I wanted to point out a couple of features that we'll be using as we go through the webinar. We'll be doing some polls, so you'll see questions pop up on your screen. If you just want to answer those, we'll give you a few minutes to answer those, and then we'll share the results. Um, Brandy also may ask you to raise your hand at times. You should see a raise hand button there, just to kind of take a poll of things. Um, and at any time you need to chat with me or Brandy, you can use the chat, and then we'll also have time for Q&A, and we'll use the Q&A feature then. So let me go ahead and introduce Brandy. Has over 20 years of experience in engineering and project management within the aerospace, civil, military, and automotive industries. She has managed many new product development projects and also implemented a change management team and competency based on CM2 principles. She has implemented management processes globally and improved phase gate development standards. Brandy holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Michigan. Brandy, I'll just hand things over to you.
Okay, let me turn on my camera just for a minute here so I can say hi to everybody. Thanks for the nice introduction, Susan. Yeah, like Susan said, my name is Brandy Taylor. I'm the president of IPX. I guess I don't know if there's anything different than what I would say from what Susan said, so I'll just leave it there. But I'll take a quick moment just to thank you all so much for spending a piece of your day here with me. We do have a special offer and some supplemental materials to share with everybody here at the end of our session today. So I've got two quick slides here before we jump in, just about IPX, in case there are some people in the room who may or may not know who IPX is. So at IPX, we own the intellectual property for the CM2 standard that has served as the foundation for the digital thread and digital twin since 1986. So our mission is to strengthen an organization's efficiency and effectiveness across people, processes, systems, and data. We have a primary focus on data integrity, which is really end to end, and that includes serviceability as well, which is really often where mismanaged configuration can lead to waste, rework, or gaps for a lot of the organizations that we work with. We've been a training company for 40 years. So on the left-hand side, that's really where we start. We offer global renowned certifications in change and configuration management and digital thread basics. So through our consulting services, we also roll up our sleeves and help organizations achieve some of those measurable quantitative improvements that they're looking for. So a lot of that is just reducing waste, eliminating rework, and just helping companies scale and reach the growth aspirations that they're really going for. Um, we also support digital tool selection and implementation through proper requirements gathering, tool evaluations, selections, and integrations. So just a quick overview there about IPX. So let me just talk briefly here about the CM2 500 standard because we talk about this. It's extremely comprehensive, as you can see on the right-hand side of the page, with 19 core business process categories and 227 operating standards for your business operations. So you'll also see over on the right-hand side the 600 standard, which is the standard upon which we certify tools such as PLM to help them have the capability to meet CM2 right out of the box. We've certified many of the more common tools in the past, such as Teamcenter, Windchill, Eris, and CM Pro, among others. So the CM2 standard just allows us to really assess an organization's processes, their maturity, and also recommend some of those tried and true best practices from across industry and across the globe. So, what I love to say is, and maybe this is a made up word, but my team doesn't opinioneer this thing, right? We've got a tried and true standard to help you guys with things that the pain points that you're having. The standard is also, it's not meant to start at 1.0 and work your way through. We understand that businesses are extremely complex, and the standard's really meant to be fit for purpose. So if you got a pain point, we can surgically solve those specific pain points. And in addition, just based on the years of experience that we have with clients, choosing tools, selecting tools, implementing tools, we have a huge portfolio of system requirements as well, already defined. So we're really never really starting from scratch. So hopefully that gives everybody just a quick little brief intro there into IPX. And so now, I'm going to jump right in. So today's webinar is called The Evolution of Enterprise Excellence. It's really just a little brief walkthrough through history here, and I'll try and use my best Morgan Freeman voice for you guys. But I think like Susan announced at the beginning, but if anyone else is just jumping in, we do. I'd love for you guys to use the chat for any questions as we progress. I'm hoping that I don't talk so much that we have a little time for questions at the end, as well as we're going to do some polls and raise your hands and different things here to kind of query the audience too. So, Susan, I think that they'll see maybe a separate tab that says when the polls come up. So when we get to that point, we can just make sure that people are able to see that. So, I think we know that everyone struggles with data. We've all got data troubles. And how do you know you have the right data, the latest data, good data you can trust, right? So, and what are the implications of consuming bad data? Would you even know? So, I think I'd like to know who has troubles with data. Raise your hand. If let's just go ahead and give that a shot here. If anybody has troubles with data, I'd love you guys to raise your hand. Um, Here's some things popping up. Let's see. Susan, tell me when you think, we've got at least a majority and what you kind of see over there.
Yeah, we've got several hands popping up um, across the
All
board.
right.
Looks like people are
Okay,
struggling with
great.
data.
So just so then who trusts the data they have at work 100% of the time? Do we have anybody? What do you see, Susan? Does anyone
No,
trust?
no hands up.
Hands. Okay, good. All right. So the hand thing is working. Awesome. Okay, perfect. So that's why we're here, right? And we want data we can trust, and we're going to talk about that today. So, just for the importance of what we're talking about, let me just walk through a couple memorable moments in recent media here today. There we go. All right, you guys might recognize this one. This one scares the living crap out of me, but that's okay. Our friends at Boeing, we've all seen the footage of this door flying off at 16,000 feet, but the why behind it is kind of a textbook case of exactly what we're discussing today. So, when the investigators got into the factory records, they found something kind of shocking, that the four bolts that were supposed to be holding this door in place weren't broken. They were never really there to begin with. So how did the configuration fail? So when you look this one up, during production, the door plug had to be opened to fix some damaged rivets in a nearby location. So in a healthy system, right, opening that door would be a configuration change that is tracked, governed, and closed out. But unfortunately, in this scenario, the digital world and the physical world just drifted apart. So there was a documentation gap, right? Because the work was performed by a separate team to fix the rivets. It wasn't recorded in the formal removal system. There was a process breakdown too, right? There was no connective tissue between the team that opened the door and the team that finished the plane. And then there's some, false sources of truth, right? So because the digital record didn't say the door was open, the final inspectors didn't know that they needed to check those bolts. So think about it like an as-built versus ad-modified records were not valid. So, when we talk about bad product data being an expensive risk, this is what we're talking about. So it's not just a typo in a spreadsheet. It's a physical disconnect that can cost billions. This one cost Boeing $160 million and so, it costs us our market value, and also maybe most importantly is cost the world's trust, right? Like I know every time I get on a plane, like I'm hesitant. I'm kind of like, what plane am I on? And so I think we all kind of live through some of that. All right, one more example here is Ford. Let's use Ford. I actually own two Ford vehicles right now. I've owned many Ford vehicles. I'm a Detroit girl, so I've bought Ford, so love Ford. they had record-breaking recall in 2025. So there was 153 recalls in 2025, more than the next nine automakers combined. This means they averaged one recall every 2.4 days that year. Um, that's over 12.9 million vehicles affected. So there were both physical and software issues. So I'm just showing on the screen a couple of the bigger ones from that year. The trailer brakes malfunctioning. So these brakes had risk of not engaging, braking delayed, braking cutting in and out, maybe some longer stopping distances, sway instability, and increased risk of jackknifing. Not fun. Um, second one is Ford recalled over 272,000 vehicles because park isn't what you think. So also not something fun to think about. Number three, multiple recalls on the rear view cameras for multiple safety issues. And I know I grew up with a car without a rear view camera, but my kids certainly don't. So they count on this hardcore. The screens could be delayed, frozen. The image could be shown upside down or blurred images. So this one cost them $270 million and 165 million was a penalty from NHTSA. So, and you can look these things up. I think I might actually have that still here. Let me just show. Yeah, so you pull up NHTSA and you can see, the settlements. So Ford is right here, number two. Fun times. Um, and then I guess the last one here is Ford recalled 1.4 million F-150s because the transmission forgot what gear it's in. I don't like the sounds of that one either. So all of these have big CM relevance, right? So, conformance to requirements, the verification of these requirements, there's a lot of systemic configuration management breakdowns here. Too many programs, across sharing components, without a unified digital thread. Software and hardware changes not synchronized are showing up here. Supplier variation not caught soon enough. Largely weak enterprise level governance over product data and change. So, it's the 2025 recall volume for Ford was historically unmatched, and hopefully we don't ever see that again. So again, big picture on the why. So Susan, I'd love to do our first quick survey. So if you could kind of pull that up for me, that would be fantastic. Hopefully it shows in a tab for everybody. Let me know when you think you got it. Oh, I see. So yeah, so let's, go ahead and select all that apply. I'd love just a query here. We're going to talk about some of these things today. So I kind of want to know who's familiar with these things. Whose organization uses Six Sigma, right? It doesn't have to be you. Just think about your organization if you've heard about it. Whose organization hires program managers that have their PMP? Whose organization uses lean methodologies? Anyone understand the organization's QMS or been a part of it or privy to that? What about SPC, statistical process control, Kaizen, ISO 9001, Agile methodologies? So I would love for you guys to go and select a few of these if these are familiar with you guys in your organization.
We've got answers coming in. We'll give it another couple seconds and
Sounds good. And then I think you can share the results, right, with everyone.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay. I wish they were dynamic. Could see them as they're coming in.
Okay, I think we're good. We'll go ahead and end the poll.
Okay.
And we'll share the results.
All right. Look at that. Wow, a little bit of everything here. Um, Definitely ISO, Kaizen's pretty high, QMS is pretty high. That's a good one. I'm glad everybody's aware of the organization's QMS. That's a good sign. Um, yeah, maybe Six Sigma's a little lower, lean slightly lower, PMP not so much. Okay, great. Awesome. That's great. So everybody's pretty at least privy to these discussions as we progress. Thanks, Susan. All right, let me see. Let me get back to my slides. All right. So, when we look back in time, it's important to remember that every major business framework that we're talking about here was really a solution to a specific crisis of its time. So just taking a quick look here is, in the 1950s, the focus was on precision and standardization. When moving on into the 80s, we really moved into that digital integration era there, and now in the 2020s, we're really facing the era of AI and connected ecosystems. And the problem that each wave, it's solving the problems of its time. So it's obviously going to leave behind new challenges for the future that the previous methodologies simply weren't designed to handle. So we'll walk through these eras here in a little more detail. I'll walk through these in just a minute. But since we're doing a bit of a history lesson here, if it's okay, I hope it's okay for me to ask what people's ages are. So Susan, I think if we could pull up the second poll, I'd love just to kind of get a bit of a demographic if people are comfortable sharing their birth date, seeing if some people are familiar with some of these things from these eras. So I did have to look up what all these generations were called. So if you don't know what you're called, you can learn that here. Um, yeah, I was unaware that before 1945 was the silent generation. So that's kind of fun. And so does seem that Generation Alpha is forming for the previous decade or so. And I've also heard that in the future, now and beyond, is going to be Generation Beta. So if you're just kind of fun. Susan, just let me know whenever you think you've got a decent contingent of responses. And if you're not comfortable sharing your age, that's okay. I'll
Yeah, go
survive.
ahead and share, end the poll now.
Okay.
Share results. Looks like
All right. Hey, we got a good bell curve there. It's kind of what I expected, right? Is I expected that you guys are all in my realm right there with Generation X. It's kind of what I expected. A little before, a little after. And we even got some Gen Z. Oh, one Gen Z. Okay. All right. Very cool. All right. So some of you guys are gonna just be privy to some of these things that we're talking about here. So very cool. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So let's start with the 50s, the era of efficiency. This was long before I existed. So, in the post-World War II boom, US manufacturing really saw itself as that unquestioned global leader. So, factories were running hot, demand was super high, and the mindset was why change what's already working? Waste reduction meant cutting scrap, speeding up human labor, and pushing more product out the door. Meanwhile, Japan was in a very different place. They were, after the war, industrially devastated, struggling with quality, and really hungry for a new way forward. And that's where you guys may have heard of Dr. W. Edwards Deming. He kind of enters the story here. So he spent the 30s and 40s developing ideas around variation, systems thinking, and statistical control. The US largely ignored him. Japan did not. They were super hungry for a breakthrough. And so in 1950, Deming provided that breakthrough. So he began teaching Japanese engineers and executives the foundation of SPC, statistical process control, and how to detect drift, eliminate some instability, and build quality kind of into the process rather than just inspecting it at the end. And his message landed so powerfully that Japan created the Deming Prize, which is one of the highest honors in quality management. So at the same time, the world was embracing the assembly line, one piece flow, which really laid that groundwork for what would eventually become Kaizen, which is a cultural commitment to continuous and incremental improvement. So these ideas combined with the SPC really transformed Japan's manufacturing base. And so by the 70s and 80s, Japanese companies weren't just competitive, they were outperforming us in reliability, consistency, and customer trust. So these methods were extraordinarily effective at making physical operations smoother, faster, and more predictable. But again, the catch, right? These were built for a world of mechanical parts and linear flow. So not necessarily to handle the digital complexity, the global supply chains, and some of the data dense ecosystems that, are in the years to come that we deal with today. All right, let's move on in our journey here a few years. The 1980s, the era of control. Uh, I was in the 90s here a little bit. I was moving into my high school years. I love the 90s. It's kind of my favorite decade. But by the 80s and the early 90s, the focus really shifted now from speed to precision. So global competition was heating up, product complexity was starting to rise, and organizations again were finally past the, inspected at the end. It was definitely becoming a losing strategy. And so instead of inspecting after the fact, it was all about preventing defects, right? So quality as a function became a trend. This era really gave us two pretty large forces. ISO 9001 and QMS overall really was born from Europe's push for global trade consistency. So it established that common language for quality across the borders, document your processes, follow them, prove it kind of situation. So for the first time, companies needed a repeatable operating system to compete internationally. And then we got Six Sigma, right? So emerging from Motorola, later championed by GE, it brought statistical rigor to mainstream. So defining the problem, measure the variation, analyze root causes, improve the process, and control the results. So this was the first time executives were embracing that the idea that defects weren't random. So they really were predictable, they were measurable, and they were preventable. So, moving from, I think the big cultural shift here in this era was just moving from inspecting for mistakes to engineering them out of the system. So again, these were precision methods like scalpels, right? So great for the problems at the time, not operating systems. So Six Sigma could dissect a problem with some surgical accuracy. ISO could certainly ensure some consistency, but neither really provided that governance model for how an entire enterprise should manage change, data, decisions, or cross-functional alignment, right? Um, all for profit. And a scalpel is really perfect for surgery, but it's not the blueprint for running a hospital, right? So, um, again, I think let me just ask for a show of hands on this one. I want to talk about Six Sigma for a second. So, some people feel Six Sigma has died. Can I see a show of hands for who agree? Who thinks Six Sigma's really died? And I think it kind of showed a little bit in the previous survey. It was kind of on the lower end. I do hear some hands raising. Susan, tell me what do you got for quantities?
We got about six people.
Six
So,
people? Okay. All right. So some people agree with that. Yeah. I think we all kind of use Six Sigma a little bit in different ways, but maybe it's kind of coming more mainstream. We don't talk about it that way. So, but kind of interesting that people think that it's dying. So, um, let's move on to the 2000s, the era of speed. So I'm transitioning now into the era where I was in college, hanging out in Ann Arbor, ignoring the rest of the world. But by the late 1990s and early 2000s, as software began to dominate our worlds, we kind of enter what I'm calling the era of speed, right? So hardware development was still rooted in super long sequential cycles, but software was all of a sudden iterating in weeks, sometimes days. So customer expectations were shifting faster than traditional engineering life cycles could often handle. So underneath all that, another major shift was, we're moving from siloed handoffs, a manufacturing centric linear kind of mindset, to concurrent engineering, where design, manufacturing, quality, and supply chain, all of these functions are starting to work in parallel instead of just waiting for that baton handoff. Concurrent engineering was a breakthrough. It was amazing. It shortened development cycles, improved manufacturability, but also introduced massive coordination challenges. So suddenly, all these multiple disciplines were making decisions simultaneously, often in different tools with different data and at different speeds. Fun times. So to keep up, that PMP and the PMBOK framework kind of was rising as a global standard for project kind of predictability. So executives wanted structure, they want risk management, they want cross-functional accountability. So PMP brought that discipline and that rigor to more increasingly complex projects. But we all know this management methodology was also viewed at the time as very waterfall, and it was often slow. So then organizations adopted Agile for rapid learning and continuous feedback. Short sprints, working increments, faster customer loops became the new norm, especially in the software teams. So yay, software could move fast. Yay, concurrent engineering could move fast. But the enterprise and especially the product lifecycle couldn't, right? We were still missing an enterprise change management process to help facilitate and accommodate that speed. So while companies got to market faster, margins did not always improve. And in some cases, margins eroded. So, more sales and not profit. So, talking about PMP, let's do a quick show of hands for who has a PMP cert. One. Susan, tell me if you see a quantity.
Just two raised hands.
Two PMP certs. Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. What about anyone trained in Agile or safe methodologies? I heard one.
Just one hand, yeah.
One. Okay. All right. So yeah. So some of us are still kind of privy to some of these things, but maybe not as many as at the time. So, okay. All right. Thanks for participating in that. So, look at our toolkit, right? And I know there's more than this, but we've got Lean, we've got ISO, we've got Agile, Six Sigma, we've got a ton of improvement methodologies and frameworks, right? So, why do we feel so chaotic sometimes at work? It's still very chaotic. And here's the uncomfortable truth is none of these tools were designed to solve systemic complexity, right? They were designed to solve a slice of the enterprise. And they're all super powerful tools. They all matter. But they're point solutions, not enterprise solutions, right? So let's talk a little bit more now about the gap, right? So many of us are drowning in tools sometimes, right? Sometimes our leadership says we need another tool. We need something new. We need something different. Tools are amazing. We need them. We probably don't need another tool per se. We probably, let's consider needing an operating model. So right now, most organizations that we are working in run on a patchwork of methodologies, each one really brilliant in his lane, but none of them designed to govern enterprise as a whole, right? And so that's the question that no one wants to ask is because the honest answer, is no one. Who manages that integrity of the whole system? Who's knitting all the pieces together? And that's exactly where the cracks form, right? We need that glue. Our organizations today are built on deep functional silos, each with its own siloed tools, its own data, its own often competing priorities, its own definition of quote unquote done, right? And I love, the image on the screen just kind of shows a standard break, right? Engineering to manufacturing is just one example, but it's just so much more. And it's the absence of a unified operating model that governs how requirements change, how data flows, how decisions are made, and how the digital and physical world stay synchronized, right? Like this is the biggest problem that we have. Without this, the enterprise becomes a collection of high performing parts that don't add up to that high performing whole. So, yeah, I mean, it could be quality to operations, it could be sales to services, it could be product planning to supply chain. So this is the biggest problem that we have, right? So, hopefully, here's a fun one. With a show of hands, who feels that they work in silos? Who's got silos? Who? Okay, a lot of popping. I'm hearing noises. Okay. Okay, good. All right, so we all agree. We all work in silos. That was my suspicion. I was just making sure that we agreed on that. All right, so now we can look at this beautiful golden picture where everything is all beautiful. So let's talk about CM2. It's the first true enterprise operating model. This is where I get excited, okay? So it's not just another initiative of the year. We're all kind of tired of that. It's a tried and true, and it's been here waiting for you to recognize that it's the love that you have been needing. It's the upgrade that, none of the earlier frameworks really ever claimed or really even attempted to be. So where Lean, Agile, Six Sigma, etc., they optimize a slice of the organization, the CM2 really does govern the entire organism. So it's the first model that treats enterprise as a living, interconnected system where decisions, data, requirements, and changes, they all must flow with discipline, with integrity. It's really the heartbeat or the circulatory system of your business. And it brings, what we're all starving for, clarity, traceability, confidence. It's not about improving one department. It's about synchronizing the entire enterprise, right? Because today's biggest failures, they don't really often happen inside functions. They're largely happening between them. So, these aren't, the problems that we're talking about, they don't need a band-aid additional check or verification step to stop the leaks, right? They're structural problems, the kind that only an operating model can really solve. It's not Ozempic, right? We got to do the hard work here. So CM2 closes the gaps that threaten the entire organization. So let's talk about that. Let's create that connective tissue that all those other tools like Six Sigma and Agile and all that assumed, right? They assumed that this foundation was already there, but wasn't. So it's just not another tool in the toolbox. CM2 is the blueprint, right, for how the toolbox, the workers, the data, and the entire enterprise stay aligned. So I'll step off my CM2 soapbox and ask Susan to pull up the next poll. Susan, I think I'm just looking to see if I'm assuming people might know what CM2 is if they're in the room here with us, but I'm not sure. So if you got a poll on that one, I think I'm just looking to see if people have knowledge of CM2. It could be maybe multiple apply here. If you got no clue, then that's a good sign for us to talk more. But maybe there's some pros here. It's very possible. So
Hold
Susan, you
on.
tell me when you,
Just then give it another second.
yeah, of course.
Okay, we'll go ahead and end the poll.
Okay, what do we got?
Here are your results. We got some good CM2 knowledge here.
All right. Okay, awesome. Ooh, we even have two people implementing it in their organization. Awesome. Okay, cool. Okay. And there's one with a no clue. So that must be a guest that someone invited. Um, okay, cool. A few heard. Okay, very cool. Thanks, Susan. All right. There we go. All right. So again, CM2 doesn't replace Six Sigma or PMP or any of these other fantastic tools, right? It provides that foundation that they've always needed or assumed was there. So it's not a competitor to any of the tools that we're already using. It's really the operating model that finally makes those tools work together instead of in isolation. So, we align people, processes, data, and technology around a single discipline model for how our information is created, controlled, changed, and consumed. Um, Again, it ensures that every function operates from the same source of truth with the same rules and the same expectations. And that's really where the real value emerges from my perspective. It's the data and information that you can trust. And most organizations today are data rich and information poor. So, this is how CM2 protects your margins, right? It's not through top-down cost-cutting initiatives, but through bottoms-up integrity. And that's where, for example, business degrees sometimes fall flat, right? When every part of the value stream is integrated, you eliminate those hidden killers from the bottoms up, right? Of your rework, your scrap, your late changes, your incorrect builds, all that stuff. CM2 doesn't make the enterprise faster by pushing harder. It makes the enterprise faster by making it coherent, right? So, like my dad, it reminds me of what my dad said. If things aren't worth doing right, it's not worth doing at all. So think of CM2 as kind of a first time yield for your upstairs. It doesn't just apply downstairs. So, maybe CM2 is turning all of your existing tools into a unified, predictable margin protecting system. Mind blowing? Probably not. But sometimes, we need to be reminded of the right way to do things sometimes and maybe what we've been trying to skip all along, right? Trying to fix things. So CM2 gives you that trustworthy data and information that you can take to the bank. I'd be amiss if I didn't touch quickly on the digital thread. So CM2 really is the foundation for the digital thread, right? It's a mechanism that ensures you got data integrity from the very first spark of an idea and concept all the way through production, through sustainment, service, and even decommission. So, the rigor, again, from a project management perspective, it's got to be fit for purpose throughout those phases. If not, our people, our teams will wait and they will release all the data right at production launch and flood the system with a mess of reactive effort that turns into deviations and waivers and often fixed way too late. So we need to design a light and lean process early where we need it and pick up that rigor intentionally when it's really required. So, many want traceability. CM2 actually builds it. So the digital thread ties every requirement, every decision, every change, and every configuration together in a way that is visible, controlled, and trusted. So it's not really a slogan, but it's a reality. So this is what we're all going for, right? Everybody talks about digital thread, but this is how we really get it, right? We all have some sort of a digital thread, whether or not it's just Excel spreadsheets or something more mature. But we're all trying to get better at this. And CM2 is not just a workflow, right? Everybody thinks of it as just the closed loop change process. It's not just that. It's not just roles and responsibilities. It's really a master data management plan for the entire enterprise, right? It's the data, it's the metadata, it's the single sources of truth, and making sure our tools are connected. So it's the architecture that makes the digital thread real, not theoretical, not aspirational, but really operational. So, Susan, I think this is my last poll. I want to ask people about the maturity of their digital thread today. So I think I have a couple questions to see if where people are on that. I think everybody wants one, I think. So hopefully everyone selects that, but maybe not some of the other ones. I think maybe there's a different level of maturity here across the board. If anyone's working on MBD, or do we manage our bombs separately, digitally? We got the good linkages, just some initial indicators here.
Still got answers coming in, so just give it another second.
No problem. If anyone doesn't know what those acronyms are, I'm hoping everybody does, but sometimes I get alphabet soup.
Okay, we'll go ahead and end the poll and oh, we got a few more coming in. Never mind.
Yeah, you just cut it whenever you're ready.
Okay, we'll go ahead and end it there.
Ooh, okay. All right, we 9 people want one. That's a good thing. Most people have digital tools. Awesome. Tools are connected. Not as many as I'd like to see. Well, I'm surprised not a lot of people working on MBD. A lot of good digital bombs. That's a good thing. Maybe not as many E-bomb and M-bomb separately. No surprise. A little bit of service bomb. That's a good sign. And linkages. Some good linkages. So that's good. Okay, awesome. All right. So you guys are working on these things. Good stuff. Okay. All right. So, what is Victoria's Secret? It's CM2. So think of it this way, right? Lean standardizes waste removal, Six Sigma standardizes problem solving, Agile standardizes deployment, but CM2 is the foundation that allows all of those standards to work together at scale, right? So, when you unify your operating model, results are awesome, right? We get the things that we're actually trying to get, right? We get the faster decisions, we get efficient approvals, predictable revenue, and most of all, high product confidence, right? When you stop fighting your data, you improve your margins. Our data is gold when we can trust it. It's a true competitive advantages, right? So all good things here. It's what we want. So a quick touch base here, though, on AI. Many leaders and people in general hope AI is going to fix all their problems, and it can help, but it does not fix broken data. it exposes it. So machine learning models, they're pattern matchers, right? So if you feed them unstructured, unverified legacy data, they'll simply learn the wrong lessons at the speed of light. We've played with this and we've learned this ourselves. So garbage in, speed of light, garbage out. Nobody wants that. Data we can trust is more important now than ever before. With all the digital tools, with the AI automation, we gotta have data we can trust. When bad data, with bad data, AI just doesn't have a chance. So no one wants bad data faster or automated misdirection. So again, CM2 is more important than ever before. So a quick show of hands, and I think this might be my last one, is whose leadership or organization is pushing hard for AI usage today? We're hearing in varying levels in some places that there's a lot of push for it. Okay. What do you think, Susan? We got about 50% there, or?
Yeah, it looks like that.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of push for this, right? And this is the future. This is going to be the way. So I think we just want to make sure that we don't have the hallucinations and the misdirection, right? So it's important. Um, trust. We need trust as that enabler. So for AI to be effective, you need a hierarchy of trust. So CM2 is that trust layer. So it's the load-bearing element of your enterprise. And then on top of that, you build your digital thread and your connectivity. And then only then can that predictive layer of AI and machine learning actually deliver value that we want, right? So I guess here I'll kind of close it off a little bit, and then we could hopefully there's time for a couple questions. I know I'm running a little tight on time here, but I'll challenge everyone in the room. Hey, if there's a proven standard to use, why in the heck would you not use it? So for joining us today, I think my team's going to share with you guys some helpful resources. I think we got a white paper, some course abstracts, a case study, some things like that. So if you want to scan the QR code here, it will give you some of that collateral. And I want to give a couple offers here for, anyone who's new to CM2 or haven't taken any training. I'd love for you guys to get introduced. So I'd love to offer you course one, which is the first course in our certification series at no cost. So, and if you want, if we can get like 5 from your organization, I'm happy just to schedule a dedicated course for you guys, something like that. So if you guys want to do that, I'm happy to offer that and get you that good conversation on the value. For anyone else, happy to offer 20% off any training, all training for you and your colleagues. CM2 is not just for the engineering and CM folks, right? Like there's everybody's got data, everybody's a part of this. And there's value to integrate here. So scan the QR code here to fill out the link to the form for us to be able to help offer these freebies to you guys. And this is my last slide. So just a quick overview for those who are unaware. So our CM2 core is that foundational 6-course series where you develop the capability to become a true change and configuration management process architect. So that's 1 through 6. Each course is 2 days, so 16 hours each. So these are collegiate level courses. As you see on the bottom, FHSU actually does provide collegiate level credits for certifications through IPX. Purdue University has embedded CM2 in their curriculum. So they actually have a 16-week undergrad course and an 8-week graduate course on CM2, which is super fun. So then past '06 is our CM2 Pro. That's that next level of certification that expands the capability beyond traditional CM and engineering into the full enterprise. That's where the cross-functional alignment and governance really, really, really matter. So I guess what's not on here is a CM2-12 course. So sometimes we recognize that these are lengthy courses, they're collegiate level. We can compress these into, a tailored course for you guys. We can do a 3, a 5-day, whatever makes sense that condenses '01 through '04, which is that base level of knowledge into like a tailored organization specific message or program that's built around your processes, your challenges, and things like that too. So happy to try to get you guys, some introduction here to this stuff. And happy to, do that in a little bit of a freebie to get you guys what you need and have the right conversations internally. So I'll go back one slide there just to see if anyone else needs that QR code there. Otherwise, we can probably email that out, I'm sure, as well. So,
Yeah, we'll definitely send a follow-up email with the links and all the information. Like she said, at that page you can get a case study, and we have the course abstracts there for you as well. And then you can fill out a form if you're interested in taking advantage of either of the offers. We have one quick question come in. Somebody's asking if this is being recorded, and yes, it is. And we will share that as well in the follow-up email.
okay, amazing. I know I'm at time, but I'm happy to entertain any questions. If you guys do have questions, pop them in the chat or just send them our way. And we'll be happy to reply to every single one of those as you guys progress. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out and listening to me and participating in the polls. Appreciate it. Hope to talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we can share the slides too. I see that in the chat there, Susan. If someone would like the slides, happy to share that
Yeah, we'll
along
great.
with the video.
Perfect.